Hello everyone, I want to say welcome to day 2 of Mindfulness for Educators mini-series. If you did not catch day 1, please go back. It's somewhere in this Facebook group, catch day 1. Also, a little update, there are handouts that I posted yesterday. If you had downloaded that, it might be 8 pages. You don't need those handouts. I posted updated ones today, and it just comes with 3 basic handouts. The Wheel of Emotions, Rate Your Stress, as well as the reticular activating system. So thank you so much for taking time out of your night to be here with me. It means a lot. If you are here, so that I know that you're here, if you can type in the chat where you're tuning in from, that'd be really helpful for me to know. My name is Shylla Webb. I am an education consultant and a life coach. I have a mindfulness yoga background, and I'm here to just present. These lessons are meant to be for you and about you and your practice and your own well-being as an educator. These are meant to help you manage your stress as you're in education today. So if you want to take this information and bring it out to your students, I welcome you to do that. But really, they're designed for you and your practice. Again, if you're here, type in the chat below where you're tuning in from. Just helpful for me to know. If you have any questions along the way, go ahead and post them. I will try and watch the chat. I'm newer to going live, so bear with me if it takes me a little bit. You see me shifting back and forth. I see we have Ryan here, Stacy here. Thank you so much for joining me. Okay, so yesterday we did a check-in. We did a Rate Your Stress check-in. And when I checked in, I wanted you to rate where you are, 1 to 10. 10, like it's over the top, too much stress. What I had talked about is if you're 7 or above, we're at a state where our cognitive functions aren't working the same. And we're just overwhelmed. And so that's why it's really helpful for me to know if you're high levels of stress. For today's check-in, I want you to think about last year when COVID-19 swept across the world and started shutting everything down, including our school system. How many of you experienced a state of shock, maybe disbelief, anger, confusion, anxiety, concern, or any other intense internal response? Some of you may have even felt sucker punched by the experience. If you have felt any of these that I listed, will you type in yes in the comments, just so I can see if you're with me? And if you typed yes, it is possible that you're still having that intensity with you in some way. Now, it might be a lot less intense today, but it might, for some of us, it might even be more intense. So type I'm with you if this describes your experience. And this is when COVID-19 happened, school shut down, and we had to quickly pivot. So what I'm describing is an experience of trauma. Trauma is an experience that causes us complete distress, and it's very disturbing, and it's disturbing within our minds and our bodies. We all have experienced trauma in some way or another in our lifetime. Sometimes it's a little bit less level of trauma, and sometimes it's a lot more intense. So what happens is this experience leaves an imprint, and what will happen in the future when we have this experience, it can elicit another negative response, even though we're not living that situation all over again. So for instance, one of the first times I traveled out to the store in Minnesota, this is when Minnesota had shut down their schools. We were in distance learning. Minnesota wasn't quite at a point of everyone had to wear a mask when you were out in public, but we had to social distance. I had gone to go into a local store that required masks, and I got my mask on, and I just remember thinking how weird this was. It was so weird to see everyone with their masks on. And in the back of my mind, there was this constant looping going on of, this is weird, this is an awkward experience. And it was weirdness kind of as in curiosity, but also weirdness wondering, should I be more concerned about these masks? Or not these masks, but about COVID-19 than what I am. And so I was just, should I be panicked about this pandemic? And I'm going through my list and getting everything at the store. And just as I turn around the corner, I see this person, much taller than me, completely fully dressed in bright yellow PPE, face blocked everything. I stopped, I turned, and I took off in the other direction. It was so overwhelming. I didn't think anything of it other than I stopped and turned and I was out of there. And it was just something that just happened immediately. So what happened that evening was I was consumed by my visceral response. It was an intense emotion that flared up. And tonight, for day 2, we're going to talk about emotions and feelings. I'm also going to provide you a mindfulness exercise that helps us deal with tough, intense emotions and helps us release that intensity of them so that they don't keep hanging out with us in our bodies, because that can really throw off an entire day. And I spent that entire evening processing through that. So if we have some interruption practice, last night we talked about cultivating awareness. I had you sit and observe and just notice any thoughts, experiences, narratives that you might be telling yourself, any emotions that turn up. And all you were to do is note them without judgment. Just notice that they're there. Okay. So tonight we're going to talk about how do you interrupt them. So if you're here with me, type yes. Hi, Valerie. Thanks for joining us. We're going to talk about day 2 is about interrupting. So emotions. Emotions are energy in motion. They are physical. They are instinctive. What they do is they produce a specific response to a stimulus that comes our way. Okay? They can be, the cool thing is that they can objectively be measured by scientists. So they measure things like our blood flow, our body stance, our facial expressions. They measure that, and science can actually measure through our brain activity and help pinpoint the types of emotions that we're having. So these emotions are active in our limbic system. So last night's handouts, I included a picture of a brain, and the limbic system is right in there, right out with the, in the emotion processing center. Right where the amygdala hangs out, that fight, flight, or freeze. And in that spot, when we experience an emotion, they are often, actually not often, they are illogical, they're irrational, and they're unreasonable. How many of you can relate to experiencing something like that and you react much bigger than what you ever wanted to, and you knew after the fact you shouldn't have reacted that way? Type yes if you have. That is an emotion that has completely consumed you. So the cool thing is that research with organizations like 6 Seconds, I don't know if you've ever heard of them, but they've done a lot on emotional intelligence and specifically gearing it towards school. They have uncovered that an emotion, it only takes us 6 seconds to experience emotion. And it actually flows out of our system within 90 seconds. That's if we allow it to. So let me say that again. It takes us 6 seconds to experience it, so for our body to acknowledge and respond to it, and up to 90 seconds to flow out. That is great news, meaning emotions come and go. And so when we say emotions come and go, they're supposed to come and go really, really fast. Energy in motion. So what happens is sometimes our emotions can become really, really intense, and it's almost like we grip onto that emotion and we attach to it for some reason. Maybe we're trying to figure out the why this emotion happened. Maybe we're caught up in the story of why this emotion was triggered. Maybe, I don't know, maybe we're just blaming. But what happens is we can grip onto it and then it grips onto us. And by doing that, what happens is we end up perpetuating the issue. No good. It then sticks with us all day long. Okay? When you think back, a really good example of emotions that arise quick, I want you to think back to the very first speech that you ever gave in school. If you were a nervous wreck when you gave a speech in school, please type yes, because I remember feeling that way. My palms were sweaty, my heart was racing, I was so nervous, I kept thinking over and over and over what my speech was going to be. And all the kids, they gave their speech before me. Unfortunately, I wasn't listening because I was so caught up in the moment. And then once I gave my speech, I was fine. I was relaxed, that heart racing, my body calmed down, the muscles relaxed. Yeah, we're all like, yes, yes, been there. And we're even there today, right? If we have to give a speech to a larger group, we can experience that all over. That's emotion. Hopefully you had a really, really good speech teacher that prepped you and told you that this was going to be an experience. And so that when you experienced that, you knew right away that this is part of giving a speech, and this is part of the first few times giving a speech, maybe part of every time. And then when we do that, we can easily release it knowing that it's normal. For whatever reason today, we're in a society where we're not talking a lot about emotions and feelings. And yet that is the key to releasing them. So do yourself a favor and start identifying, this is how I feel, this is what's happening. Otherwise, what happens is when you start attaching to that and we stick on to that, that's where it turns into a feeling. And what a feeling is what plays out in our head. And so a feeling is a response to emotion, and it's a state that stays with us. Okay? So think about it. Someone triggered you that day. And I remember when my kids were really little, at like age 2, I have 2 boys back to back, 13 months apart. So they were really young for a while there, and I was working to get them out of the house, get to work on time, and they were at that state of independence. They wanted to do everything on their own, but yet they took forever to get it done. It was like 2 or 3, and I remember that emotion would just flare up, and I just wanted to get them going. And sometimes they would push back because I wasn't being very mindful of myself and just kind of pushing them along. I thought I sounded nice, but I probably had some edge in my voice. And then we went to daycare. They were crying mess sometimes going to daycare. It wasn't that bad. I'm being a little dramatic, but then that sat with me the rest of the day. Like I felt like just the worst mom in the world, guilt-ridden, all of that. So that's where I had turned it into a feeling, and it became a state. What I didn't know then is that I really needed to be talking about this. I needed to be going to a close colleague or a friend and saying, I'm feeling like this. I am feeling so overwhelmed. Instead, what happened is I actually just said, my day was good. It's good. Everything's great. Because that's the common response that we give to someone. My friend Stacy had pointed that out. She said she is thinking about forming some accountability friends or accountability partners at work. And so when they ask one another, how are you doing? What they really mean is we don't want some just generic response, good. We want to actually label how we're feeling. So what happens when you can actually label how you're feeling? And the reason why I give this wheel of emotions is because sometimes when we're in the emotional state, we're actually in a state where we can't label. Our frontal lobe, all of that, the higher order thinking has shut down. We just react like I did at the store. Then a little bit later, we can start going through and saying, oh, I was feeling overwhelmed. The emotion that I was experiencing was overwhelm, was shock, was anxiety, was fear, whatever, some type of distress is what I was feeling. When we get into the point where we can actually think about it and start labeling it, that means I'm in a rational state of mind then. So think about how that can be a game changer for ourselves and our students. So getting them to label it. And even if you can't label it yourself, what we want to do is call on the accountability partner to label it for you. You can label it for your students as well. Give them the words that they need so they can even start releasing that feeling and that emotion. If we do not, what happens is it actually sits in our system and it festers. And in the long run, it can turn into ailments. So emotions are simply information, and that's it. I want you to think about that. When we don't allow them to flow through as they're meant to, that's when we experience the great consequences. And they even start perpetuating the situation, and that emotion or that feeling state grows larger and larger and larger. I also want you to think about it this way. So we can never experience in life, no matter how terrible, there will be never anything more than a bunch of thoughts plus a few physical sensations with that. And that's exactly what emotions are. And if you know that they can flow through really, really fast, if you allow them to flow right on through, can you handle that? Type in yes if you can handle that. So for today's mindfulness practice, I want to lead you through a body scan. In this practice, we're looking for you to discover points of tension that you might have in your body, and I'm going to guide you on how to begin releasing them. So just like yesterday, I asked that you take an observer-like position. You just, when you go through your body scan, you just note that, yep, it's there, and we pass on to the next thing. Try not to hang on to it. Try not to discover the why behind it. We'll get to that at another point. Right now, we're just labeling and we're noticing it. So go ahead and get comfortable. You may sit back. In yoga, we usually go into the Shavasana pose, which is laying back. Just go ahead and get into a relaxed body. Gently close your eyes if you're comfortable. Again, if you're not comfortable, go ahead and just look down at something close to you. And you want to just stay focused on that one item. We've all had busy days today. I've been talking a lot. So I'm just going to sit there and I'm going to anchor myself to my breath. Feeling the flow of the inhale come in through my system. And feeling it flow right back out on an exhale. So just tuning in to the steady, continuous flow of your breathing. Sometimes tuning into the sensations, the coolness of the inhale, the warmth of the exhale helps anchor us. We can focus on our breathing versus other thoughts that might be playing around in the back of our mind. So for this body scan, we are going to start at the crown of your head. So focusing on the top of your skull, noticing if there's any tension. If you notice there's tension, I want you to go ahead and release that tension with every exhale. Bringing in the new on the inhale and releasing anything built up on the exhale. Traveling down into your temples, your eyelids. If you notice that you're squeezing them, gently release that tension that's there, relaxing even more into every single exhale. Moving down into your jaw, that area. Notice if your teeth are clenched, your tongue is pushed up against the roof of your mouth, allowing your mouth to relax, your tongue to relax. Sometimes I relax so much it feels like I'm going to drool. But go ahead and release any tension that exists in that spot. Moving down into your shoulders. Bringing in new energy on the inhale and releasing anything that no longer serves you on the exhale. All that tension is freed. Coming down into the arms, into the chest area. Again, just observing any tightness, releasing that tightness and tension on every exhale. Moving down into the abdomen, the belly area, your hands. Deep inhale in and releasing any tension on the exhale. Focusing a little bit on your hips, our buttocks. If you're squeezing anywhere, clenching, go ahead and release. Relaxing your body. Moving down into the hamstrings. Inhale with new energy and releasing anything that's old, all that tension on every exhale. Coming into your knees. If you're standing in a position like I am, soften your knees. You don't want to lock them. Go ahead and move down to your calf muscles. Breathing in renewal and releasing anything old and any tension. Coming down to your feet, toes. Sometimes it helps to wiggle your toes a little bit here. Bringing in an inhale down to that tension and releasing it with your exhale. So we're going to travel back up on your own, releasing anything more. bringing about some awareness with your breath, allowing it to naturally flow in and flow out. And when you're ready, I want you to slowly open your eyes. Remember, take your time opening your eyes, just letting a little light in at a time. Too much light too fast is going to shock your system, potentially agitate it, and carry on with you throughout the rest of your evening or day, depending on where you are. So I know I said we're going to be done in 20 minutes. Body scan, the real practice takes much longer than that. But this is a really quick form you could do. Just even if you are in the classroom and you know that you were triggered, go ahead and just quickly scan through and see where that tension is and release that tension with every exhale. You can do that right while you're teaching as well. Or if you're with your family without anyone noticing. So what we want to do is, again, we want to recognize it and say, yep, there you are, and go ahead and give your body and your system permission to release it. It really is that simple, and it's super effective over time. So tomorrow we have a super exciting guest coming, Ryan Lockey, who wrote the book Wisdom Beyond the Classroom, a really good book. So he's going to come and he's going to talk a little bit about his book, some of the lessons in his book, and then he is going to be our special guest that does some guided meditation for us and a mindfulness practice. He actually taught and did mindfulness in the classroom as well. So it's fun to have Ryan. Thank you so much to be joining us here tomorrow. Again, if you have any questions about your practice, going into a deeper practice as well, don't hesitate to message me, direct message me, or you can even look at my website, which is innermatter.net. You can fill out a contact form and I'll get that right away and I'll be able to connect back with you directly and personally. So thank you again for taking time out of your evening, being here with me tonight, day 2. Day 3, Ryan Lockey is going to be here with us, giving his words of wisdom and guiding us. And then Saturday is the final session of our Mindfulness for Educators mini-series. So thanks again. I hope you all have a lovely night. Goodbye.